What happens when the deadliest predator in the galaxy meets the only human brave enough to swim beside it, without a cage, without fear? This is not just a story of survival. It's a story of trust, of connection, and of defying every expectation. In the universe, one woman, one monster, and a moment that changed everything. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and show some love with a thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's jump into the story. Marin Calloway had always felt more at home in the water than on land. While other children played with toys and watched cartoons, Marin sat by the ocean, listening to the waves and mimicking the songs of whales. As an adult, she became one of the world's leading oceanographers, not because of her degrees or awards, but because she did something few others dared. She swam side by side with predators, no cages, no spears. Just her, the open sea, and the quiet understanding that came from years of study and respect. For over a decade, Marin had been diving into some of the deepest and most dangerous parts of Earth's oceans. She had looked a tiger shark in the eye, guided lost dolphins through treacherous currents, and once followed a giant squid into a trench that nearly collapsed around her. People called her reckless, brave, even foolish. But she always replied, with the same calm voice, "You don't fear what you understand." Her goal was never to tame these creatures. She only wanted to learn their language, the silent one spoken in movement, posture, and pattern. It was a quiet Tuesday when everything changed. Marin was conducting a solo dive near an uncharted reef in the northern Pacific. Her boat, a small but sturdy research vessel called the Driftling, bobbed lazily on the waves. The sky was clear, and the water below shimmered with sunlight. She was preparing her equipment, checking the oxygen levels, when a strange vibration passed through the air. It was low and humming, like a whale call mixed with thunder. Then came the light. At first, it was just a glow in the distance. Marin assumed it was some strange reflection or a trick of the sun. But within seconds, the light grew brighter, whiter, and hotter until it hovered directly above her boat. The ocean around her fizzed and sparkled, as if reacting to the presence of something unnatural. Marin shielded her eyes. A loud humming filled her ears, and then silence. When she opened her eyes again, she was no longer alone. 3 figures stood on the deck of her boat, though the surface hadn't been disturbed. They were tall, easily over 7 feet, and their skin shimmered like liquid glass. Webbed hands rested at their sides, and their large, dark eyes blinked slowly as if adjusting to Earth's atmosphere. They wore no helmets, yet they seemed perfectly at ease. Marin stared, unsure whether to speak or dive overboard. One of the figures stepped forward. His voice came not through his mouth, but directly into her mind, gentle and firm. "Marin Calloway, Ocean Observer, we are the Corinth. You have been selected." Marin blinked, heart pounding. Selected for what? She asked aloud, barely able to form the words. The figure nodded toward the sea. "Your planet's oceans hide many secrets. But we have watched you. You do not fear the deep, you listen." The second figure extended a translucent hand toward her. "The Corinth Alliance maintains research stations on hundreds of planets," it said, this time speaking aloud with an accent that didn't match any Earth language. "We observe predator species across galaxies. But never have we seen one of your kind interact so peacefully with apex lifeforms. You have something we do not: intuition." Marin didn't know what to say. She dreamed of discovering new species her whole life, but nothing had prepared her for this. Still, curiosity beat louder than fear. "You want me to come with you, underwater?" she asked. The first Corinth nodded. "Not just under, beyond. A research station lies beneath your ocean, hidden in the deepest trench. It houses species from worlds far from here. We believe you can help us understand them." She hesitated. She thought of her boat, her journals, her quiet life among coral reefs and midnight dives. But then she thought of what she might learn, what no human had ever seen. "Do I have time to pack?" she asked with a half smile. The third figure, silent until now, replied softly, "Everything you need will be provided." Within moments, the boat was gone. How or where, she couldn't say. Marin now sat inside a vessel that felt alive. Its walls pulsed softly like the inside of a jellyfish. The Corinth called it a hydroshell, and it moved faster than anything she had ever imagined. Through the crystal-clear exterior, she watched the ocean darken as they descended farther than she thought physically possible. For a long time, no one spoke. The silence was comforting, filled only with the quiet hum of the hydroshell and the swirling of water outside. Then, lights appeared below them, soft blues and purples, blinking gently like deep-sea creatures. But these weren't animals. They were buildings, towers, and walkways. A hidden city, Marin gasped. The station was massive, stretching across the ocean floor like a sunken metropolis. Domes of shimmering material pulsed with energy, connected by glowing tunnels. Fish in shapes she couldn't identify swam between the structures, too fast and strange to study properly. "Welcome," one of the Corinth said, "to Reef Tenebris, the last place on Earth, and the first step to everything else." Her hands trembled, but not from fear, from wonder. Whatever this place was, she had been brought here for a reason, and she was ready to find out why. The first thing Marin Calloway noticed when she entered Reef Tenebris was the quiet. Not silence, there were sounds, soft and low, like the hum of distant engines and the trickle of flowing water, but it was the kind of quiet that made you whisper without meaning to. Walls of the underwater station curved like shells, glowing faintly with bioluminescent patterns that shifted slowly in color. Everything seemed to breathe. The air smelled like salt and minerals, and the pressure was heavier than on the surface, but Marin adjusted quickly. Years of deep dives had trained her body for it. What she wasn't prepared for were the creatures. As she followed her guides, the Corinth, through the glowing halls, she passed massive glass enclosures and deep holding tanks. Inside swam things that looked like they belonged in another dimension. Some glided like rays but had too many wings. Others blinked with glowing spots across their bodies or changed color every few seconds. One had a long spiral body that pulsed like a heartbeat. None of them looked friendly, but none of them looked mindless either. They moved with purpose, intelligence, curiosity. Walking beside her was Veltrin, a tall Corinth whose skin had a subtle green tint. He introduced himself as the station's lead biologist. His voice echoed softly, not just in the air but in her mind, like a thought she didn't create. He spoke of predator behavior, brain chemistry, and galactic classification codes that made Marin feel both fascinated and slightly dizzy. But the most important thing he said was this: "You are here to do what we cannot. You do not control predators. You connect with them." They reached a large viewing chamber at the end of a long corridor. The walls here were thicker, made from some kind of transparent material Marin didn't recognize. A few alien scientists, none of them Corinth, worked at floating control panels. Inside the chamber was a tank so massive it took up nearly the entire dome. The water inside was darker than the rest of the station's tanks, almost black, like it had swallowed the light. "This is where we keep Core," Veltrin said, his tone more serious now. "Core is a predator from a planet known as Nyrix. It has no known natural enemies. It hunts anything that moves. All attempts to understand its behavior have failed. 3 of our best researchers died trying to study it directly." Marin stepped closer to the glass, her eyes adjusting to the shadows. At first, she saw nothing, then movement. A slow, gliding shift in the water. And then she saw it. Core was enormous, at least 30 feet long, with a body shaped like an eel and fins that fanned out like wings. Its head was broad and flat, with no visible eyes, only rows of glowing spots that pulsed red, then faded to violet. It moved with quiet power, every motion calculated. Even in stillness, it gave off the feeling that it was aware. Watching, waiting, it's magnificent, Marin whispered. Core is a nightmare, Veltrin replied, folding his hands behind his back. But you may see something we've missed. You've worked with sharks and other apex predators. You know how they think. Maybe you'll help us find patterns we've overlooked. Marin watched the creature for a long time, ignoring the murmurs of other researchers who didn't hide their doubts. A few looked at her with curiosity, others with concern. Only one seemed friendly, Nira, a younger Corinth with soft golden skin and a quieter presence than the others. She offered Marin a small device that would allow her to take notes and record visual observations. They don't expect you to succeed, she said gently. But I do, you see more than they do. That night, Marin was shown her quarters small, round, and filled with soft blue light. A single window looked out into the deep, where strange silhouettes drifted past like ghosts. She didn't sleep much. Her thoughts kept circling back to Core, its strange, pulsing lights. The way it glided like it was part of the water. The way it hadn't lunged at the glass when she approached. That, more than anything, had caught her attention. Most predators test their boundaries. Core didn't. It had watched her, but it hadn't reacted the way she'd expected. The next morning, she returned to the viewing chamber, notebook in hand. She sat beside the tank, cross-legged on the floor, and began to study. The other researchers barely looked at her, as if expecting she'd give up soon. But she stayed. For hours. She recorded how Core responded to feeding routines, how its color changed depending on movement outside the tank, and how it circled in a figure-8 pattern when food was late. She noted how the glowing spots dimmed when the room was quiet and brightened when someone approached. Each day she returned, the creature seemed to become more aware of her presence. On the third day, it followed her shadow as she walked along the tank's edge. She moved slowly, testing its reaction. It turned when she turned. It stopped when she stopped. Marin felt something stir deep inside her, something familiar. This was how sharks behaved when they were curious, not threatened. That evening, she met with Veltrin and the others. They expected her to report nothing. Instead, she spoke confidently. It's not hunting behavior. It's not aggression. It's watching. It's learning. You've been treating it like a weapon, but it's just a creature that's never been. Understood, Veltrin frowned. Are you suggesting we let you into the tank? Marin didn't hesitate. Not yet. Give me one more day to observe. Then I'll go in. Veltrin shook his head. That would be reckless, dangerous. So is every first step, Marin said with a quiet smile. But I'm not going in as a threat. I'm going in as someone who listens. Veltrin didn't respond right away, but Nira looked hopeful. And Core, in the dark water behind the glass, swam closer than ever before. Marin stood in the dim glow of the observation dome, her eyes fixed on Core as it floated silently in its tank. The creature's glowing sensory spots pulsed a steady violet, the color she had come to recognize as calm. Around her, the station was unusually quiet. Even the researchers seemed to hold their breath whenever she entered the chamber now. For 3 days, Marin had observed every twitch, every swirl of movement, and every color shift of the mysterious predator. She had built a map in her mind of its patterns, when it fed, when it drifted, how it circled when curious, how it floated, motionless when sensing danger. Every action Core made seemed to say something, and Marin was beginning to understand the language. On the morning of the 4th day, she suited up in a black wetsuit. It had no armor, no extra padding, just the essentials. A small oxygen tank, a mask, and a wrist light. She stepped into the narrow chamber that connected to the tank, feeling the cold water rise around her as it filled. The researchers watched from the other side of the thick glass, tense and silent. Veltrin stood at the center, arms crossed, clearly disapproving. Nira offered her an encouraging nod from the control station. Marin gave a small wave, then turned as the inner door opened. The water inside the tank was darker than she expected, even with her wrist light. The glow from Kor's body floated just ahead, soft and blue. As she entered fully, the creature didn't rush toward her or retreat. It simply hovered, its long body gently undulating in the cold current. Marin stayed, still letting herself adjust to the depth and temperature. She focused on her breathing, slow, steady, non-threatening. She had learned long ago that predators could sense fear, not as a smell, but as movement. Quick, jerky, confused motion that made a body look like prey. She kept her limbs relaxed and her eyes open, tracking Kor's every move. The creature circled her once, wide at first, then closer. Its spots flashed a deeper violet, then faded back to blue. Marin raised her hand, palm outward, and moved it gently side to side. It was a greeting she had used with sharks for years, one she believed showed calmness and curiosity. Kor slowed. Its long body drifted closer until Marin could see the tiny ridges along its fins, the way its skin shimmered like liquid metal in the light. Still, it did not strike. Outside the tank, the researchers leaned closer to the glass. Time passed. 5 minutes. 10. Marin moved slowly, not toward Kor but alongside it, swimming parallel as she'd seen dolphins do in the wild. The creature kept pace with her, occasionally pulsing its lights in quiet rhythm. Every nerve in her body was alive with awareness. This wasn't just a swim. This was communication. After 15 minutes, Marin stopped and turned to face Kor. The creature paused, head tilted slightly, sensing her shift in position. She extended her arm again, then pointed downward, slowly diving toward the tank floor. Kor followed. At the bottom was a large rock structure, where the creature sometimes rested. Marin didn't approach it directly but settled a short distance away, resting on the sandy floor. Kor circled once more, then lowered itself into a resting position. They remained like that for several minutes, silent and still. In the control room, the other scientists had begun to murmur. What they were seeing didn't match any of their data. Veltrin stood stiffly, his jaw tight. This wasn't what he had predicted. Kor was supposed to react with violence, to prove once and for all that apex predators were incapable of change. But now he was being proven wrong. When Marin finally returned to the entry chamber and removed her mask, a wave of soft gasps rippled through the observation room. She had stayed in the tank for over 25 minutes longer than any researcher. Had survived longer than any safety measure had ever lasted. She was cold, tired, but smiling. Nira ran to meet her as she exited the chamber. That was incredible, she said, her voice full of awe. It didn't even try to attack. It didn't want to, Marin replied simply. Kor's not a killer because it enjoys it. It reacts to threats. That's all. And I wasn't a threat. Veltrin stepped forward, his voice sharp. This doesn't prove anything. You were lucky. The creature is confused. It's not confused, Marin said, turning to face him. It's intelligent, and I think we've misunderstood it entirely. We've been testing it like a machine, but it learns, it adapts. Later that evening, Marin was invited to a gathering of the research team. Most of them, still unsure what to believe, asked question after question about her experience. She answered each one patiently, showing her notes, describing the body language she had observed and the patterns in Kor's behavior. The most surprising moment came from an unlikely source, the Klazari biologist, Jarn, who had previously predicted Marin wouldn't last 5 minutes. He leaned across the table and asked, "Could you teach us?" Marin nodded. "Some of it. Yes, the rest takes time. It's not about tricks or training. It's about listening." In the days that followed, Marin began teaching a few interested researchers how to approach predators using patience and presence rather than control. Some were skeptical, but others, like Nira and Jarn, listened closely. Each day, Marin returned to the tank. And each day, Kor met her at the same spot, waiting quietly, watching. But not everyone was pleased. In a private chamber high in the station, Veltrin watched recordings of Marin and Kor together. His eyes burned with frustration. The creature, once feared across star systems, was now calmly interacting with a human. Worse, that human was undermining years of his research. He clenched his fists as the screen played Marin's slow, graceful movement beside Kor's glowing body. "She's making a mistake," he whispered. "And I'll prove it." Marin adjusted the new diving suit Nira had modified for her. It was lighter, more flexible, and allowed for better movement underwater. It didn't have any weapons or defense systems, just a sleek design and a built-in sensor to monitor her vitals. The plan for the day was simple: enter the tank, approach Kor, and attempt direct communication through movement and pattern. For the past week, they had developed a silent ritual. Kor would meet her near the edge of the tank, circle once, and then follow her lead as she swam slowly through the water. It wasn't affection, it was recognition, mutual curiosity, a form of respect. As Marin entered the chamber, the water rose around her, and she prepared for another quiet session. But something was different. The temperature felt colder than usual, not just slightly unnaturally cold, the kind that made her muscles tense and her breaths shallow. She tapped her wrist device, but the reading didn't change. In the observation room, she could see Nira frowning at the controls, clearly puzzled. Then, without warning, the lights in the tank flickered and died. Total darkness swallowed her. Her wrist light blinked to life, but it wasn't strong enough to cut through the heavy shadows. Around her, she could hear the low hum of the tank's filtration system struggle, and then fail. Her voice cracked through the "Control. The lights are down and the temperature is dropping fast." "What's happening?" No reply. Marin's heart began to beat faster. She turned slowly, careful not to stir too much water. In the distance, she saw the faint red pulses of Kor's sensors. The soft blue curiosity glow was gone. Red meant alert. Red meant stress. She knew that from days of watching. Something had changed in the environment, and Kor was reacting. From behind the tank's glass, Veltrin stood alone. The other researchers had been sent away under the excuse of a system update. Nira's access had been locked out. Veltrin stared at the screen, where two glowing shapes moved in the dark. Marin and the Predator. This, he told himself, was science. A test, to prove that instinct could not be overruled by empathy. Inside the tank, Marin's thoughts raced. Kor was agitated. Fast movements now would be a mistake. She steadied her breathing and floated in place, slowly moving her hand in the gesture they had practiced. Circle, pause, side wave. She repeated it, hoping the creature would see. The red glow moved closer. She saw it circling her, fast at first, then slower. Marin matched the motion, a dance in the darkness. Then came the sound, a low, trembling pulse that vibrated through the water. It was Kor's hunting call. Marin froze. She remembered how great whites would sometimes call to one another in low tones. A signal, a warning, or a test. She had to break the pattern. Remind Kor who she was. Slowly, she swam downward, angling toward the rock formation they had rested near before. She extended her hand and turned slowly in a spiral. The glow behind her paused, then dimmed slightly. It was working. In the control room, Veltrin stared at the screen, furious. The creature wasn't attacking. It was calming. He slammed a fist against the console. That was when a crack appeared in the tank's outer wall. A thin, jagged line. The rapid drop in temperature had stressed the material. Warning alarms blared throughout the station. In the tank, Marin looked up and saw the fracture, spreading. Like lightning across the glass, the structure groaned. She turned toward Kor, who was now only a few feet away, still glowing red, but not charging. "We have to move," she whispered, knowing sound mattered less than motion. She pointed toward the corner of the tank, toward the hatch that led to the connecting corridor. Kor didn't move. Then, the tank shattered. A thunderous crash sent water rushing out into the station, slamming Marin against the wall and sucking Kor through the open breach. The corridor filled instantly. Emergency doors began to seal, but Marin swam hard, dodging debris and trying to keep sight of the predator. Her oxygen tank hit something and snapped loose. She gasped, clutching her mask, trying to find a pocket of air in the chaos. Somehow, she made it through the final door before it slammed shut. Behind her, the hallway was flooding. Then she saw Kor, gliding through the water with powerful strokes, avoiding the panic of the rushing tide. The red glow had faded. It was blue again. Marin struggled to her feet in the shallow flood. A voice called out, a desperate cry. Veltrin was pinned beneath a fallen support beam. The water was rising fast. He saw Marin and shouted, "Leave me. The creature will kill us both." Kor appeared behind her, silent and vast. "No," Marin said. "It won't." She turned to Kor and raised her hands. The signal was clear help. She pointed to the beam. Kor paused, then moved closer, pressing its powerful body against the debris. Marin joined in, pushing with all her strength. Veltrin screamed, terrified, but the beam moved. Kor's body heaved once, and the path cleared. Veltrin gasped in disbelief. "Why would it save me?" "Because you're not prey," Marin said softly. "Not anymore." Later, as evacuation pods launched, the station crumbling behind them, a special pod had been modified to hold water enough to keep Kor alive during transit. Marin stayed with the creature, whispering quiet thanks. Its sensors glowed a soft, steady blue. Weeks later, Marin stood before a council of alien researchers from across the galaxy. She presented her findings, not with charts or graphs, but with recordings of Kor's movements, glowing patterns, and moments of trust. The council listened in silence. In the end, one member stood and spoke. "Your species has achieved something we believed impossible." Kor floated beside her, silent, but alert. Marin smiled. "Understanding isn't about control. It's about listening." And in that moment, predator and human stood side by side, not enemies, not test subjects, but two beings who had met in silence and chosen not to fear.